Hey everyone, we are here. It's been like a month, maybe, right?
Yeah,
Since I
yeah,
last
we're
taken.
such slackers.
Yeah, we've been just
We're
lounging
busy. We're
around.
not slacking.
Just lounging to the truth. No, hey, but it's good to be back with you both. Good to talk with all of you who are watching us. For our next Sticky Notes chat. This time we're actually discussing something very very relevant at the moment as vaccines are gradually being rolled out all over the world, and one thing that we've been thinking about a lot is what happens to UX careers. What happens in the near term, what happens further out, what happens as you're practicing UX, what happens as you're looking for a job. There's all these very kind of interesting topics, very, at this point, somewhat speculative. It's obviously things are changing rapidly everywhere. We don't know for sure, but we have some guesses, hopefully. I'm here today. I'm Cory Lebson. I'm here today with Chris Notter and Amanda Stockwell, and we'll be talking today about post-pandemic UX careers. So, of course, if you have questions in real time, certainly feel free to write them on the chat. We will hopefully see them, and we'll do our best to respond to them as well. And if you are watching after the event, send us any questions on Twitter at Sticky Notes Chat, through email, chat@stickynotes.chat. Yeah, I think that's it. And if you want to find any of the old streams, of course, you can find us on stickynotes.chat. Yeah, there's so much to say. There's so many starting points. It is a huge topic. No definitive answers. Where do you want to start?
Where do I want to start? Go on.
Well, I was going to say, I think we were all just talking sort of off camera. We were all talking about demand, and I know that is a conversation that has come up a lot. A lot of people have asked me, like, are there more UX research jobs? Are there less? Are people hiring in-house or more freelancers or more agencies? So I would be curious to hear both of your perspectives and share what I heard too, because I've been hearing that question a lot. Like, do we think there's going to be more UX research or less? And if so, where? And so speaking from my own experience, I had a slow start to the pandemic. I had a bunch of projects get pushed or canceled or indefinitely paused. But the last several months and the next several months have been incredibly busy. I think that at least from in my network of people, I feel like the demand for UX research is climbing, and I don't see a plateau in the near term future. I'm curious what you two think.
Well, I think there's a backlog. I think certainly I felt slowness on and off over the pandemic, and it's not that research didn't happen. It just there was a little bit less of it. And now it looks like, particularly I'm feeling like from the summer onward, it's like, oh, we have all these even now it's starting, but not as much as kind of it looks like projecting anyway. It just looks like there's this backlog of projects, of energy, of funds to do research, and and for that matter, not just research. I think it's to do projects and a variety of kinds of UX going forward. So I feel pretty optimistic.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there was a slow spot, but I think you're right. That need didn't go away. It was just nobody could work out how to do it. And as soon as we as UX researchers worked out how to do it and convinced other people it was possible, and as soon as they realized that they could, things weren't going to be going back to normal anytime soon, they realized, yeah, we've got to keep doing it. So yes, lots of work still happening. And luckily, given the tools we've got, lots of opportunities to still do that stuff remotely.
Well, so I'd actually say the opposite. Well, yes, there's lots of opportunities to do it remotely, but I my passion is in-person research. It always is. I would much rather be in person than remote, given the option. And sure, I've done plenty of remote lately, but what I've discovered is requests, even like possible requests I'm getting from June onward, are all in person, which was the normal for me before, because I really kind of, advertise myself as one in person, there, no remote, sure, I'll do it. But one thing that, even starting to think about that, is a little intimidating, because, I was just kind of thinking through a local project here in Maryland, and, trying to think through, okay, so my team is, I'm sure, going to be fully vaccinated by June. The client team already told me they're probably fully vaccinated by June. The facility is probably all fully vaccinated by June, and we might be able to recruit participants, because it's a really simple recruit, who are fully vaccinated, and with the caveat, if legal. Not There was some discussion we had about that. Is it legal to say, "Hey, are you vaccinated?" Not sure. I don't know what the answer is. I haven't gotten there yet. But with all this stuff, then what's the protocol? Because now that we had the pandemic, I did have an in-person protocol, very COVID safe and so on. What if everybody's vaccinated? And I don't know what the protocol will be. I mean, Maryland is fairly strict in their laws, so obviously you have to obey the laws. But what are the CDC guidelines going to be here in the States anyway? In 2 months, no idea.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the things about this past year that's been hard, and I think is hard looking forward too, is that as someone who is a typical type A, let me get out my calendar and book you 6 months from now for a lunch date kind of a gal, it's been incredibly hard to schedule things. And I think, to your earlier point, Cory, like that may have been why there's such a big backlog now. I also think there's another part of it that everyone's realizing that they can't just stop forever, right? There's still stuff that needs to get done. But, I also think that people are, it's really hard to plan. Like, to your point, in 2 months, and even a good case in point, I've been working on a project for about 2 months that is just wrapping up, that we were specifically, it's for a hardware company, we're specifically asking people what hardware they're using and asking what their plans were moving forward. If they're planning to stay working from home or go back to offices or whatever. And even in the 8-week period or so when we were conducting research, at least in the United States, perspective has changed. It started to shift, or it started to become a lot more unknown. Whereas 2 months ago, everyone that I knew of was kind of still planning to be remote as much as possible. That doesn't seem true anymore, at least in the States. And that same project, we talked to a couple people in Europe, and depending on where they were in Europe, they're either still totally locked down or starting to think about things. And so one thing I think for everybody that you're going to have to just be aware of is that it's hard to plan anything right now, let alone research efforts, right? It's hard to know, people's products are pivoting, people's whole lifestyles are pivoting, and it's changing faster, I think, than ever before, because there's so much new input. But I agree. I think it's so hard to plan, especially as a consultant. I think you two might feel my pain. It's hard to plan under the best of circumstances. But right now it feels like everything I do, I have to have 3 plans for, right? I have to have plans for doing it in person, and if so, how to do so safely, depending on what's happening at the time. Doing it kind of remotely and kind of in person for the things that we need to, or doing it totally remotely. And so I was going to bring up, kind of, because what you said, when you think of it, I feel like we all need to have 3 plans for everything. So everything seems like more work right now, because you can't really just be like, well, this is an ideal situation, let's do this. Seems like we don't have that luxury. What do you two think?
There's definitely a need to think about, to do much more contingency planning than we'd ever do. I mean, my old contingency planning was, have I arrived, if I book this flight, will I arrive in time if the flight's delayed? Now it's is there even going to be a flight? Am I going to be doing it that way? Am I going to be doing it remotely? How do we recruit people and tell them, well, you may be in person, you may be online. So yeah, there's a bunch of, and even if you say, okay, there's so much uncertainty, let's definitely do this online, then the reduced fidelity is kind of an issue there. And I know Cory's super over this. I'm kind of, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do is very exploratory stuff, and doing it in person with somebody, I mean, you pretty much can't do the equivalent of a site visit with anything like the fidelity. I mean, this is something that Sumit was asking. It's like the universe, he's saying the usability testing and card sorting research methods are so hard to be used from a distance. Well, yes and no. I mean, you can do card sorting. Actually, that's one of the easiest ones to do.
I actually have a whole course about remote research, so I will send that to you after. I've got a lot of ideas, but we would spend the whole hour talking about it.
Amanda's course goes into a lot of these details. But I mean, yes, it's not, you don't get quite the same fidelity maybe as you do when you're in person. If somebody's doing an unmoderated remote card sort, you don't get to hear their thinking around it, which is part of the stuff which gives you all the extra details. So yeah, it's a big issue. But it's not stopped me doing research. And again, I mean, sure, I can't do site visits, but I can definitely interview people remotely for exploratory interviews. And that still gives my clients a lot more information than they'd have if we didn't do anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I would say too, you know, I've done tons of remote research projects, you know, in COVID. And as a matter of fact, last summer I was doing some in person. I stopped by November when the numbers kind of kept climbing. But you know, but basically, you know, it works. It does work. It's not as much fun, you know, as a researcher. It's not as much as engaging for the client. They don't observe as many sessions, and when they do, you know that they're multitasking. You know, it's not. It's not as, you know, they don't get as much out of it, and not that they don't get anything, they do, but there's a level all around, you know, I think of the value of kind of particularly, you know, with research, having it in person. But anyway, but going forward, I also wanted to say that I feel like, you know, anecdotally, you know, talking with UXers, I feel like there's two mindsets going on. I find myself the mindset which is, okay, we're ready to go out, get my vaccine and go. You know, that you know, come this summer, I will be like every possible, you want in person or remote? In person, all in person, you know, to whatever extent possible. But there's also a mindset which is like, you know, okay, you know, I've been doing my design at home, I've been doing my research at home, I've been, and things have been going pretty well. You know, I you know, and you know, I get a little more flexibility. It's all good, right? So I mean, I don't find, I can't kind of grasp the feeling. I mean, I understand it. I can sympathize, but I can't empathize, you know, with that feeling. And I understand, I know it's there, but I feel like this drive to like get out of, you know, my basement home office here. It's like an overwhelming feeling. But I know there's only two.
Maybe if you had a window in your office, you wouldn't feel that feeling quite so much. No, just kidding. I mean, I know, Cory. I mean, this is something that you've made your whole career around doing this in-person stuff. For me, I'm just fed up of traveling. I was fed up of traveling before the whole pandemic. For me, it was like, awesome. Everybody's going to be working like I work. Yeah.
Well, one thing I think that like has become especially clear for me, and something that I think has given me, I've always thought about, one of the reasons actually that I have promoted remote research in some instances before is for accessibility reasons for participants, because I know that, and just reach, right? Like some of it is like pure accessibility, like maybe not everybody can make it to your lab or whatever, but also you get to talk to people in small towns hours and hours away from recruiting facilities or whatever. But personally, I think I fall somewhere in between on the spectrum of Cory and Chris. I do miss traveling and I miss in-person work, but I have a medical condition that makes me high risk, and so I'm interested in working in person again, but I have to take different precautions. And I think for better or worse, I hope we can make it be for the better. I think that the pandemic has forced some people to think a lot more about accessibility and just like what it means to be able to make a decision like that. It is actually pretty common. So I've been talking, I live in North Carolina, and the way that they have rolled out the vaccines, where in group 4, which is if you're high medical risk or an other essential worker. And it's kind of a local joke that if you try hard enough, everyone's high risk, which, right, because everyone I know that is anxious to get a vaccine, and there were some fuzzy rules about what qualified you. But I actually think, but one of the things that I've talked to some people about that I think some people maybe were not as aware of before is that for some people, it's a real luxury to be able to travel at will. For some people, it's, I interviewed someone yesterday who said she had never participated in a study before, but it's because she had a specific condition where she doesn't know every morning when she wakes up, like how well her legs are going to work. And so she doesn't know if she's going to be able to drive that day. And she doesn't know, she doesn't know that kind of stuff. So moving forward, I think one thing that I'm hopeful for is that to both of your points is that I feel like the pandemic has made it more acceptable to have some flexibility. Or maybe go back to whichever extreme you want. I think there's going to be more opportunities for people like Chris who would really prefer not to travel a lot. And I think there's going to continue to be plenty of opportunities for people like Cory who can't wait to get back to their old life and in person. But I'm really hopeful that not just in UX, but that everybody is afforded more flexibility, and that when we're conducting research, that maybe we can look at remote as a good way to not replace in person. I don't think never say never, knock on wood, but I don't think I'm ever going to come from a frame of mind of like, we should just get rid of all in-person stuff and do remote. I don't feel that way. I think there's a lot of really great stuff. Yes, it's more fun as the researcher, to Cory's point. Yes, you can glean more of their context and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're going to totally ever replace it. But I hope that we can use it as a way to combine it. Like maybe if you're doing, site studies, you can also do some remote interviews with, folks who live further away or people who are less mobile or that kind of thing. So I'm hopeful that moving forward, we can have more flexibility and that we can have more conversations about, okay, like what's really appropriate for this research effort? What sort of people do we need to talk to? And what are the things that we really want to get to in person versus, okay, well, if your option is like, don't do any research or do a remote usability test instead of an in-person one, let's do that. And so I'm hopeful, I don't know how accurate this is, but I'm hopeful that we can use this all as kind of a way to get better at accessibility and also get better at having clearer conversations about prioritizing what we really need to do in person versus remotely, and kind of hopefully making it so that everyone along that spectrum of Chris to Cory has something that that works for them. I don't know if you two have encountered that conversation at all, but it's come up a lot lately for me.
Well, so a few thoughts. Number one, I probably did the usability study with my oldest participant, a 95-year-old man in a nursing home,
Cool.
Remotely, on Zoom. If you had asked me before, would you be doing any kind of remote study with someone who's 95 years old? I'd say, well, there's technology learning barriers. It might be more difficult. So I think that the penetration of Zoom and like-minded products does make remote research easier. I also want to say, even in COVID, every study I did was actually a hybrid study, where there was like a protocol, which is, oh, you've got a family member with COVID now, and that really happened when I was doing in-person research. Don't come in. Whatever you do, don't come in. We'll do the study remotely, no worries. And that was true. But also that's been true with some of the harder to reach participants when a lot of them aren't. It's in person, and there's like 1 or 2 sessions or 3 sessions or 4, whatever, that are remote. So I do think kind of the hybrid model hopefully will be retained. Or at least the emphasis on hybrid, as it's either hybrid or remote, and the hybrid is totally fine, when needed. But also, in kind of one final thought, about I guess the accessibility aspects. So I think there's also physical. Well, in terms of like doing research with blind users, which I was doing before. I didn't have a project in particular during COVID in the last year. It's not that common. I do those projects, but there's also harder aspects to that because there's more that's very helpful to observe in person, in real time. Not that it's impossible, but when you're combining the screen reader with the screen share, it's a little more clunky. But also mobile devices. I still don't think it's easy to do good screen shares on mobile devices. Because it's just clunky. It shouldn't be clunky, but it's still clunky. So that's something, or physical products, certainly.
So if anybody has a tool that lets them do screen shares of mobile devices remotely, please let us know. A good one.
I feel like I've tried everything.
It's unstable. If you do like a voice through it, also it gets jittery. You lose the screen share, you lag the screen share, you don't see where they're touching sometimes. You're kind of like, what did you do to get there? I have no idea. It's not smooth, it's not solid, it's not reliable.
Listen to us whining about the fact that we can use our pocket computers to talk to other people's pocket computers across the world, right?
Yeah.
But no, it makes the research problem more difficult. That's one of the areas where mobile research on mobile devices is definitely harder remotely. Yeah. It's also one of the ones where context is so important, right? I mean, if somebody's using a mobile device while they're on public transport, that's part of the context of the use of it. And if you're just like sitting on their couch doing it, it's a different context of use. They're not being interrupted the same way, all those kind of things. So yeah, big issues with that kind of stuff. And just to be clear, I'm not completely grumpy about traveling places. I mean, I've suggested to a couple of people that I should not be doing training workshops with them remotely, because the style of workshop I do is incredibly intensive, incredibly hands-on. And splitting it over several days is possible, but not good enough, really. It doesn't allow me to see that everybody who's involved is engaged. So yeah, I'll be waiting until it's safe for people to be back in an office to do that properly.
Yeah. And I think that kind of is a nice segue to something that it kind of starts to get some of the questions we're getting. And by the way, we have content around some of the questions that you're asking. So we may point you to some of that other stuff so that we can, kind of focus this conversation. But one thing I know that I've heard, and actually, so my husband started a new job over the course of COVID. He has never met any of his coworkers in person except for a person he'd worked with before. He's very tall. He's 6'5". And at one point on one of his calls, he stood up and his colleagues were like, "Oh my God, you're so tall." And so one thing that I find really interesting, or maybe just a thing to talk about, is not just connecting with like participants, but with colleagues and other people you're working with. And, kind of like forging those connections. And so I don't know that it's specific to UX jobs, but I think something that's been really top of mind for a lot of people I know is like making sure that you're being able to connect with people remotely when having work conversations, and because you kind of miss out on that, like walk into the water fountain or go in and get a cup of coffee or just kind of chatting about your day. Doesn't seem like there's so much opportunity for that sort of thing. And so one of the things I kind of do some like career coaching things, and one of the things that I was really helping some of the people that I mentor with is that it sounds cheesy, but you have to try extra hard to remember that the people you are talking to are people, right? And so like, don't just get connected and then be like, "Hi, okay, agenda item number 1." Because in real life, in a real meeting or a real whatever, you'd have a little bit of adventure time. You'd say, "Hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? How's your son?" Whatever. And for whatever reason, culturally, it seems like on virtual meetings that happens less so, at least in the meetings I'm in. I don't know, do either have sort of thoughts or experience around what that looks like moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, so I find that, personally, I a chunk of my social time is the loose network of associations I have with colleagues, clients, and I have not been able to maintain that in COVID. Like it's just a value that I gain from being with these people in person, and I can't find it any other way, remotely. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to, kind of in the coming back.
Another part of UX people's job, if you're used to working with colleagues in an office, a lot of what you do is poking your head around their door, their cubicle, and saying, "Hey, what's going on? Hey, that last study that we ran, do you remember those people we saw? Are you doing anything about that thing that was the thing?" And you can't I mean, it's hard. It looks a lot more like nagging when you do that in email or some more formal conversation. But if you're just like stopping by somebody's desk and casually saying, "Hey, let's chat about this," that's just such a big part of our roles typically. And if you can't do that anymore, maybe you're losing the influence or the potential for influence that you had. And finding new ways of doing that, that's hard.
Right. So it doesn't have the feel good, and it doesn't have the effectiveness. Either way, you kind of lose. It's a lose. I mean, I think yes, there's there's benefits again to remote work for sure, but not in the kind of social value. Like you can't replicate it. You can replicate it, but you can't really replicate it.
Yeah, well, that's like with all the tools, right? It's like there's all these sticky note tools, but all they're trying to do is replicate sticky notes. They're not actually looking at the underlying tasks we're trying to perform and finding better ways of doing those tasks. This is actually one of my kind of moments. It's like, come on, people, you've developed all these sticky note tools. Great. You can now put pieces of virtual paper on a virtual screen. That's not what we need. What we need is a tool that lets us organize our thoughts better. Sticky notes was our paper way of doing that. Where's the digital way of doing that that's better? And that's my beef with all of those tools right now. So it's like, yeah, again, the virtual environment doesn't help us particularly for doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I find funny about that is that is often couched as a tool for like researchers and innovators. And I'm like, but did you research that at all? Because just digitizing a physical thing doesn't give it the same worth or value. And it's actually like a conversation they have with clients a lot. Like, just because you can digitize something doesn't mean you should, or it doesn't mean that it will work the same way, or that it will solve everyone's problems. And I think it's so funny that, like, especially the sticky note thing, and they can be great for certain things, but I'm like, did you employ any of these things that you were suggesting that we use for those when you were coming up with that? It does not seem like you did.
I would say, with respect to remote stuff, where our pandemic was about 10 years too early. Maybe 5 to 10 years too early. I think I had mentioned a month ago, I kind of leaned into VR just for like a different visual experience, over the last year. And it's so not there yet. I mean, it's so not there. It's there, but it's not there. But 10 years from now, if we can strap on our little itty bitty glasses or or not even strap on, just put our glasses on, our contacts on, and we actually see the people. The AI removes the glasses, makes their face real, totally real, not creepy real. I mean, a pandemic 10 years from now, hopefully it will be 100 years from now, but a pandemic 10 years from now could actually, some of the stuff that we're complaining about might not be valid complaints anymore, because we have like something so close. Maybe we have gloves on that, not gloves, it just pings your brain or something. You can pass the virtual notepad as you. I think we will be there very soon. We're not there yet, for sure, but we've accelerated. We've moved history quicker than the year that it's been, towards a real valuable remote process. We're just not there yet. I don't know that I want it to be there, but it's going to come. I think it's going to be all the more feasible to do stuff a decade from now that it isn't today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's hope we don't find out with another pandemic.
Well, I don't think we need to, because I mean, lots of the stuff I'm reading from the news right now is it's going to be more of a hybrid model for being back in the office. You might be in the office a couple of days a week, and then the rest of the time you'll be from home. So hopefully that also will jumpstart some of the needed research and development in this space for helping this work. Again, I think we're going to be borrowing other productivity tools to use for our research rather than having custom built ones for some time to come. But it's still going to be hopefully better than it is now. And I mean, okay, so Cory, yeah, we've all got virtual, our virtual goggles. But again, is your 95-year-old dude in the care home going to have his virtual goggles? Who knows? We're going to have those same issues. It's like, yeah, I'd love to run the remote research, but there's these system requirements that you need to have. Like 5 years ago, it was, do you even have a webcam? I mean, that's kind of not a question you have to ask anymore, right? But it's going to be, do you have VR goggles? Oh, do you have VR goggles that work with this system? Oh, do you have, so yeah. It's going to be that pain that we go through again with the new technology to get to that point. Says the naysayer here, right? But
you earned your UX Trump moniker today.
Yes. I even had my coffee. Come on. I mean, yeah, I know. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff kind of from this pandemic situation that's not really. It's not really made, it's made a bunch of change, and it's forced some of the technology, but it's not made that much change to what we do, which is the frustration, right? Because we still need to go back to doing stuff in person in order to get the level of fidelity we want.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And so thinking about our two things, we've got work, we've got getting a job, and we've got doing the work. And thinking about getting the job, I think that we're going to find that UX, this pandemic has made UX all the more salient, not just in terms of this year or whatever, but as we're talking about these VR, AR, artificial intelligence, not as technology specifically, but rather their impact on all our lives. I think there's a lot for UXers to do. And there will be a lot to do, on these competing products, but still, there's just a lot that's going to happen. I think we're in a really good space right now because of the boost to technology that COVID has given us, in a number of areas.
And you're talking about the new technologies, but I mean, one of the boosts I'm seeing is so many people who maybe had a combination of an e-commerce and a physical brick and mortar store. We're now saying that they need to improve their customer service in the e-commerce space because they sucked. And so there's so many more people at so many levels, from large multinationals down to local stores, who are needing that kind of UX assistance. And there's people who can support the large multinationals, all the way down to people who can support the local stores, on a more local basis. So that means there's more opportunities there for people in UX. Typically, I think those are the people who might call themselves UX/UI, which I hate, by the way, but that moniker, yes, I know. We could talk about why. Let's not bother. But yeah, I mean, it's still, there's a lot more opportunities for people to do UX work. The question is, are they actually capable of doing it? Have we trained people enough? Have we got a way of assessing how good people are to do this stuff? Have companies got a way of assessing how good people are?
And also, of course, that ever-present supply-demand ratio. I mean, it was, before it was tipping towards the UXer. I mean, there's not that many, particularly experienced UX professionals for the number of jobs that were available. But if the number of jobs increased rapidly because of this acceleration in technology, all the more so there's going to be less people available. There's going to be, maybe it's good for salaries for those that are available and do exist, but ultimately, we're going to need to get more well-trained, versed UXers in the mix as we go forward, because we need to kind of maintain that harmony between the number of jobs available and the number of people who are able to do those jobs.
Yeah, last night I was. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, last night there's a local ladies at UX virtual chat, and we were talking about just sort of specifically the local to me, but just kind of like what careers are looking like right now sort of conversation. And there was a couple different perspectives on the call, but one of the people was a recruiter who worked with a lot of different tech companies. And, I thought that UX was hot stuff 10 years ago, and 5 years ago, I was like, UX research is the real hot stuff. But hearing from her last night, she was like, every company, and I kind of seen this trend coming, but she said, especially in the last couple of months, every company that maybe thought about having a UXer or maybe had a UX designer or two is now definitely separating out and focusing on hiring research people as well as designers. And again, that trend was already kind of happening, but and I don't have an exact, explanation for this, but I have a hypothesis that, to Chris's point, all those people who are maybe still a little bit hesitant about going fully digital, or all of those people who are, even if they're like technology forward companies, had old ways of doing certain things, but just had to shift their thinking last year, were forced to, did not have an option unless they wanted to go under. Think about some new ways of going, and it's easier than ever to compare experiences. And my hypothesis is that all these companies that had UX designers that were, or sort of UX generalist people, but who were mostly designers, finally kind of got enough, banded together enough, and maybe kind of got enough to be able to say, we really need another person who can focus on the research part so that I can focus on the design part, I think is what's happening, at least around where I am. And so, yeah, we could have a whole conversation about the delta of senior and junior level jobs. And we know that, I know it's something we've talked about before, that there are a lot of senior positions open, less junior positions open, but I have heard, and I don't know how much this is true, that people are more willing to hire at least maybe some mid-level or some people who have maybe some associated experience, but not exactly, because there is just such a delta between available jobs and qualified people, that it sounds like, at least near where I am, that companies are so desperate for help that they are a little bit more willing to, get people who transfer in, or get people who have close but not quite cigar what they were looking for, sort of experience. So I'm hopeful too for that kind of trend, because I know that there's an issue with lots of people trying to get into UX and who are new to it, and that ever-going paradox of, how do I get a job if I don't have experience? How do I get experience if I don't have a job? I can and have talked about that before, so we can send you all resources on that.
Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, this whole experience thing, you're right. There's more of a potential for people to get into the role, because there's so much demand. There's more people. Employers are going to have to bite the bullet and hire people who have less experience. At the moment, they still seem to be able to choose from, because there's potentially more unemployment at the moment, they still seem to be able to have the luxury of saying they want a certain amount of experience. I don't think that's going to last for much longer. I think as we come out with as we come more into a position where more companies are able to hire again, because a lot of them were under a hiring freeze during the pandemic, I think those top level people are going to be snapped up. And yeah, Cory, to your point, they may be able to command a better salary. I'm not sure that the entry level people are going to be able to command a better salary because of that. I think there's a big myth about the salaries in UX. No, the salaries are true, especially if you're West Coast, Bay Area. Yes, you can have a big salary because you've got a high cost of living too. But as an entry level person, you're not going to get paid that same money. Those numbers you see on the screen aren't necessarily the ones you're going to get paid until you can prove yourself. And you can't do that without the experience. So and the experience is working in a company, working with other team members, learning from people. Yes, you can get some experience by doing, we've done the whole thing about how can you get experience in the past. There's other ways of getting it, but the way that companies are going to understand is spending time in the organization and going up through the ranks, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say, I mean, when looking at other job possibilities of people, I do think even starting UX salaries are higher than
Oh, yeah.
a variety of other jobs.
Yes.
But also, one thing I'm thinking, as you're kind of talking about, those entry level folks, and I'm saying this, we're all LinkedIn Learning instructors. We all teach these virtual classes. I will say that there is benefit to be gained from in-person learning, in-person, like boot camps and that kind of thing. Even like a 1 day thing, whatever, in-person meetups, things like that, where it's a combination of socialization in terms of kind of, talking the language, interacting, making small talk, as well as socialization with other UX people who, loose association gets you your job, your future job. So we have had that loss, over the last year, in that every training is virtual now, every meetup is virtual now, and in terms of people starting out, I'm really hoping that we see kind of a return to the in-person opportunities, not getting rid of the remote opportunities, because certainly there's a need for them. There's people who don't live near them. There are people who can't travel to them, whatever. And it's excellent that so many more have the virtual option. But I really think we need to get those back online in person when feasible, because there's a value that was gained that new job seekers don't have right now.
Mm-hmm. So I was looking back through our previous episodes. Episode 23 was about newbies. How do you get into UX as a first job or as a transition from another role? So people should go watch that on the stickynotes.chat site. There's other ones as well that we've done. There's a starting out. How do you start and how do you get your team started doing usability work? How do you get buy-in? There's a lot of stuff that we've done in the past just on this stuff, on this series of chats. I'm going to do a little plug as well. I put together a website with a whole bunch of all three of our courses, which will take you through learning user experience. And on the resources page there's a section on experience and how to get it. It's not everything that employers are looking for, but it's something you can do to put yourself ahead of a lot of the other people who are looking for roles now. And yeah, Cory, you're right. I mean, a lot of the people that I see coming into UX now are coming in from other areas like hospitality industry and coming in, which is awesome. I mean, we need diversity in our role, in our jobs, and people who are coming in from hospitality. I mean, they've got the people side of it, for sure. But for instance, the salaries there, yes, you'll be potentially looking at higher salaries, but it's also a different skill set, and it's learning that skill set that's the issue, and getting to the point that employers are happy that they know you've got that skill set.
Yeah. And I see someone saying, "I'm not going to run a live in-person training." I as an instructor, I've done exclusively virtual training and speaking, over the last year, and it's just not fun in the way that in-person is, where you can look at people's faces. I mean, they're just speaking from the instructor standpoint. When you could see people's faces, where you say something and then you see, oh, they get it, or oh no, I should rephrase. That level of engagement, again, just more kind of personal feeling, as an instructor. And again, I'm saying that we're all LinkedIn Learning instructors, but there's a place for everything. So yes, at the moment that I have the opportunity to do in-person teaching and speaking as well, like I will be jumping, just like the research. I will be jumping at it.
Training is so much nicer in person when you can actually see the audience. And I mean, it's not so nice if they're all falling asleep, but that never happens in my sessions. So.
Never. Well, one thing I was going to say too is that it's one thing I think of like virtual training is like get started or get like an overview of things, and then I like to do in-person training that's like customized for a team based on what they need to know. Like I love online learning for like getting myself familiar with a new concept or getting some new ideas about how to do something I already do. But I think there's a distinct, like there are just like with research, right? Like there's different contexts within the learning makes sense virtually versus like hands-on and in person. So for what it's worth, though, I also really miss the training part in person. I find that much harder online. I've done it. It's not as good. It can work, but it isn't as good.
Yeah. Yes. So,
Yeah, well, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say. I mean, there's so many different elements of this future, isn't there, that we're not sure of yet. It's like this. There's all still being up in the air about what we are or aren't going to be able to do. Hybrid seems to be the word of the day, doesn't it? If this was Sesame Street, that would be the word of the day. Yeah,
You get it on the screen there, hybrid.
yeah. I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it is. I mean, I think probably hybrid is going to be true for a long time, and maybe permanently too. I mean, maybe did people really need to go to work, 5 days a week? No, I mean,
Did we really need to run all our sessions in person?
right, exactly. Yeah, it's a mix. There's a mix of stuff, a mix of balance, harmony, in work and life. That maybe we see the other side now, and then we bounce back, but not 100%, but 30 to 70% as one circumstances dictate. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of kind of interesting things happening in the future. There's a lot that, like you said, there's a lot we don't know, but there's also a lot that's going to be very interesting, as people watchers that we are, as society watchers, as product watchers. There's a lot that I think is coming. So, but yeah, I think we've talked about all the exciting, maybe not all the exciting stuff, but at least we've touched on a variety of exciting stuff related to kind of the future and what it may bring. Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully as those of you that are listening, maybe this will give you some ideas to go ahead and speculate. Think about where it's going and keep an eye on the next month, the next 3 months, the next 6 months, to see and the next year, to see what happens.
Yeah, let's plan to talk again next. I don't know, maybe a quarter or so we check in and see how wrong we were.
Right. Yeah, it's no, everyone's just gonna stay at home. That's it. No, don't do that. But yeah, we are. I'm Cory Lebson. We've got Chris Notter, Amanda Stockwell here, and yeah, we've enjoyed. At least I've enjoyed. I think you've enjoyed too.
I hated it. Never want to do it again.
Yeah. We do these great sessions, and hopefully we'll be online again to talk at some indeterminate future when we have some idea of what you want. But if you want to tell us what you want, then please do. Please let us know. I'd like you to talk about some topic of interest that we perhaps haven't spoken about, or some tangent. We are certainly interested. So with that, you can find our old episodes on the Stickynotes Chat website. You can find us on all the channels we mentioned before, be it LinkedIn, be it Twitter. You can feel free to spread the word, and email us. So they'll go to all our email addresses. If you send a chat at Stickynotes.chat, and yeah, I think we've got it all.
We've done this topic to death.
We've got nothing else to say. Yeah. So thank you. Great to talk with both of you, and yeah, we will talk again soon.
Yeah, stay well, everyone. Bye.